Greetings to the interwebs and all our friends that may be interested in a book read today. My name is Mr. Harrell, and I'm here at Summit Technology Academy, and we are in the second floor, taking a walk upstairs. We're looking at some of the space that we have around us. You can see out the front door, there's a lot of common areas where students can do some reading and studying. And to my right here, there's a classroom called International Studies Academy. And inside that classroom, they run a business simulation with a company that they call Global Prep Squad. And so in that particular company, they will do sort of cultural trainings for businesses that might be interested in doing business overseas and around the world. Down this hallway is all of our nursing and all of our health science classes. And then to this side are the networking classes and the computer software classes. And we have decided to set up camp this afternoon, in the collaboration room on the second floor. So we're going to cut it away to Jade and the crew inside the collaboration room today. Take it away.
Arnie, the donut, cooked up by Lori Keller. Arnie turned out to be just the kind of donut he hoped to be. He was made very early in the morning at the Donut Bakery, hometown of the best donut around. Arnie was proud to be one of the best he knew. The people that all over town made special trips to his bakery to buy donuts of their very own. As Arnie sat on the tray, which had just been placed in the donut case, he took a moment to reflect on the amazing things that had happened to him that morning. Number one, cut into a ring. Number two, deep fried. Number three, cold. Number four, iced. Five, sprinkled. And number six, named. Arnie looked around and saw all sorts of donuts sitting nearby. He tried to strike up a conversation with an apple fritter on the next tray over, but she didn't seem to want to talk. It is rather early. Maybe she's not a morning donut, Arnie supposed. It was 6 a.m. and the bakery had just hung the open sign in the window. Arnie was fascinated as he watched customers stream into the bakery. One by one, donuts were chosen, placed in paper bags, and whisked away with their new owners. Some went by the dozen in giant boxes. Just then, Arnie looked up and saw a man pointing right at him. Before he could say another word, he was pulled from the tray and placed in a paper bag of his very own. Thank you, Mr. Bing. Have a nice day, Arnie heard the baker say to the man. Mr. Bing, that's a fine name, Arnie decided. I can hardly wait to meet him. The ride to Mr. Bing's apartment was a little bumpy. Arnie was grateful for the soft napkin and the baker had so thoughtfully placed underneath him in the bag. He had never ridden in a car and wished he could look out the windows to see all the sights. But more than anything, he wished he could meet Mr. Bing. Why does he keep me in this bag? Arnie wondered. Finally, the car came to a stop and they were home. Mr. Bing carefully removed Arnie from his paper bag and placed him on a clean, shiny plate. What a handsome plate, Arnie said to himself. I'm not crazy about the design. I prefer a more modern look, but it's nothing a little paint can fix. Mr. Bing gently lifted Arnie from his very new plate. Isn't that cute? Thought Arnie as he closed his eyes and smiled. He wants to hold me. As Arnie relaxed in Mr. Bing's hand, he felt himself moving higher and higher away from his plate. When he opened his eyes to see where he was going, he discovered that he was headed straight for Mr. Bing's open mouth. What are you doing? Shouted Arnie. Mr. Bing was stunned. He dropped Arnie back onto the plate. I was going to eat you, he replied in shock. Eat me? Arnie shrieked, his sprinkles flying everywhere. Why would you do a thing like that? Do you make a habit of eating all your house guests? No, of course not. So why then did it suddenly occur to you to eat me? Arnie demanded. Well, Because you're a donut. That's what donuts are for, to eat. Do you mean to tell me you've done this before? Yes, I eat a donut every day, Mr. Ming said sheepishly. Arnie froze. He felt sick and frightened and angry. He thought to himself for a moment, I must put a stop to this right away. I'll call the bakery and warn the others. Whoever's left, that's it. Arnie knew that there was no time to waste and that he needed to be very sneaky in order to keep his plan from Mr. Bing. He turned to Mr. Bing and said in his sweetest voice, Excuse me, sir, but I don't believe we've been properly introduced. My name is Arnie. Hello, Arnie, Mr. Bing stammered. I'm Mr. Bing. Nice to meet you. Mr. Bing, would you be a dear and allow me to use your telephone? Arnie asked extra politely. Oh, well, okay, Mr. Bing and had said Mr. Bing, and he handed Arnie the phone. As quickly as he could, Arnie dialed the number of the bakery. The baker answered the phone. Downtown Bakery, home of the best Mr. Bakerman, Arnie frankly whispered. This is Arnie the Donut. Do you remember me? You made me 5:15 this morning, and I was bought about 20 minutes ago by a man who goes by the name of Mr. Bing. Yes, Arnie, the baker answered. What can I do for you? Now, I don't want to alarm you, but just moments ago, that man tried to eat me. And not only that, he claims to have eaten hundreds of us. I'm going to make a run for it, but I wanted to warn you so that if you see him coming into the bakery again, you can stop him. Oh my, Arnie. I thought you understood. That's why I make donuts, for people to eat. I can't believe it, Arnie gasped. Are the other donuts aware of this arrangement? Well, I think so, the baker said. Let me ask them to make sure. The baker yelled to the other donuts. Do you donuts know that you're going to be eaten? Yes, we know, the donuts shouted back. We're delicious. Did you hear that, Arnie? The baker said. Arnie forgot all about his plan to escape. He collapsed back onto the plate, glanced up at Mr. Bing, and he muttered, All right then, let's get this over with. Go ahead and eat me. Mr. Bing gazed down at Arnie. I'm not going to eat you, Arnie, he said reassuringly. I just wouldn't feel right about now. Really? Arnie said with a huge sigh of relief. Well, I'm glad to see that you've come to your senses. But since I'm not going to eat you, Mr. Bean continued, I'll have to figure out something else to do with you. I paid good money for you, and I don't want to be wasteful. Of course not, Arnie agreed. What we need to do is each make a list of things I can do with you instead of eating you. Between the two of us, I know we'll come up with something. Good plan, Mr. Bean, Arnie said. This'll be a breeze. I bet I'm a good I bet I'm good at lots of stuff. They both feverishly wrote down their ideas. When they were finished, Mr. Bing asked, Would you like to read yours first? Sure thing, Mr. Bing, Arnie answered. Things Mr. Bing can do with me instead of eating me. Do you need a ballroom dance partner? No, I don't dance. You could use a personal fitness trainer. I'd get too sweaty. How about a portrait painter? Oh, heavens no. Would you like me to entertain you at parties? I don't like throwing parties. I could be your chauffeur, but you can't see over the steering wheel. I'd make a great bodyguard. Who could you protect me from? A cookie? Alrighty, Mr. Bing, let's hear what you came up with. Okie dokie, he replied. I just know you'll like some of these. Things I can do with Arnie instead of eating him. I could use you as a pincushion. Ooh, too painful. How about an air freshener for my car? How about not? Would you like to be a picture frame? I don't imagine so. I need a new bowling ball. Well, don't look at me. You'd make a fine paperweight. Boring. Then what about a doorstop? Try again. But there was nothing else on Mr. Bing's list. They were both completely out of ideas. Arnie and Mr. Bing were exhausted. They felt terribly disappointed. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Mr. Bing finally spoke. I'm sorry, Arnie, but it's clear that we can't agree on anything for you to do around here. This is difficult for me to say, but I think it would be best if you found another home. I know, said Arnie, fighting back tears. I'll just be on my way then. Is it alright if I keep this napkin to pack up and all my loose sprinkles? Of course, Mr. Bing replied sadly. As soon as I get a job, I'll pay you back the money you spent on me. That's not necessary, Arnie. Arnie shook Mr. Bing's hand and thanked him for his kindness. Mr. Bing opened the door, and as Arnie left, he paused and said, I guess donuts really are only good for eating, aren't they? They both waved goodbye, and Arnie was gone. Mr. Bing stood at the window and watched as Arnie walked away. He walked past the flower beds, the mailboxes, and the apartment manager's office. Remember how happy I was at the beginning of the story? He passed the tennis court, the swimming pool, and the clubhouse. But when Arnie reached the No Dogs Allowed sign at the end of the driveway, Mr. Bing suddenly came up with a new idea. Arnie, Arnie, wait up, yelled Mr. Bing as he ran after him. Arnie turned back and stopped. When Mr. Bing caught up with him, he was out of breath. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, Mr. Bing panted. Arnie, I've always wanted a dog and could never have one because they are not allowed here. But there's no sign that says no donuts allowed. Arnie perked up, and when he realized what Mr. Bing was thinking, would you like to take walks and play fetch? Mr. Bing asked excitedly. You bet I would. Can you do tricks like rolling over? Rolling over? Look at me. I was made for rolling over. Well, then there's only one thing left to ask. Arnie, will you be my donut dog? Oh, Mr. Bing, I would love to be your donut dog. From that moment on, Arnie and Mr. Bing were inseparable. Arnie liked being a donut dog even better than he liked being a donut. He went through a short phase of chewing on furniture and barking at the mailman, but after a crash course in obedience school, he graduated first in his class. Everywhere the two of them went, people would stop to pet Arnie. No one had ever seen a donut dog before. Arnie and Mr. Bing had so much fun together. Arnie was the best pet Mr. Bing could ever have hoped for, and Mr. Bing was Arnie's best friend. The Thanks for reading with us this week. Have a great weekend.